Hello and welcome to my channel. I am Zodiac Bandit, and ever since Campaign 3 ended, it put the gods in a very interesting position. Now, for those of you who are unaware or need a little bit of a reminder, the gods after the end of Campaign 3 are now going to be reincarnated into mortal form somewhere on Exandria. Maybe it could be a different realm, who knows, but we know they're going to be reincarnated into mortal forms to evade the eye of Predathos, who looks for immortals. So they're going to be mortal again, and this gives us many possibilities as to what could happen to these gods. I've talked about some of that in the past, but today I kind of want to focus on which gods the players could be in the future, like which ones I think would be super fun if the cast of Critical Role were to be those gods. And I'm going to give two answers for each member of the cast because I think that'll just be more fun. Some of them are going to be related to stuff that they've done in the past, and some are just some that I think would be really interesting if they went down this route. Do they need to know they're these gods? No, I think actually that would be more interesting if they didn't. And, you know, there are some of them who were a little unclear about which ones of them actually qualify for this mortal form thing, as certain, deities are a little different from other deities, but we're just going to assume all of them fit in the blanket of their being reincarnated. So just for today's video, we're understanding that all of the gods in Exandria have been reincarnated, and even if there is some truly wishy-washy stuff going on, well, we're just going to ignore that for today because it'll be more fun to do so. So I'm going to start off with the one that is probably the most obvious out of all of them, out of, what if the cast were gods, and that is simply Ashley with the Everlight. Now, we have seen this, pairing a lot over the years. Pike follows the Everlight, slash Saren Ray, depending on what name you want to give her. And then during Downfall, Ashley played this character, and it just makes so much sense to me for her to be this character. This is a god that is basically tied directly to Ashley. For those of you who don't know, Saren Ray is actually like a Pathfinder god that got brought over and didn't get changed in any meaningful way. So it's basically just a Pathfinder god that they had to slot into the world of Exandria, which I think is kind of interesting and cool. So that is interesting in and of itself, and Ashley's the one who brought that character over because of the connection. For those of you who don't actually know, the Critical Role game, when they were just at home, was a Pathfinder game before it was a D&D game, before they made that switch. So that's where that sort of comes from. So the connection between Ashley and the Everlight is ever present. She is constantly, related to the character, whether it be through Pike, whether it be through Trist, whether it be through bringing the character over into D&D in general. That is all Ashley. Technically, Matt did that too, but the two of them are just intertwined. And for her to play this character again, or, to do a different twist on it than what Trist was, would be rather interesting and rather cool. To see the differences between Trist and whatever the new version of the Everlight would be a fascinating choice, and I think it would be just a lot of fun to see her play this character again. The other potential god for Ashley would be the Stormlord. Now, yes, there are connections between Yasha and the Stormlord, but I think what would be super fun about the idea of her being the Stormlord is the contrast between Ashley with Saren Ray and Ashley with the Stormlord. Ashley with Saren Ray is, that's a peace character. Like, Saren Ray is literally one of her domains is peace, whereas the Stormlord, his domain is war and tempest, which I think is an interesting contrast between the two characters. One is life and peace, one is war and storm, which I think is really cool and a really interesting contrast. So if we wanted to see Ashley go one of each direction, where she's rather violent with one or rather peaceful with the other, I think that's there, and that'd be a really interesting story for her to, one day play as Saren Ray and then one day play as the Stormlord. I think that's just a really cool contrast. It would be really fun for us to see, at some point, because she already played Trist, so she could now play as the Stormlord later and be a lot more aggressive and maybe lean more into the Yasha aspect of Ashley's roleplay, which I think would be a lot of fun. Moving on to Taliesin Jaffe, I think this one's pretty obvious as well, because Caduceus is, a character that we saw through an entire campaign who was a follower of the Wild Mother. It just makes a lot of sense that he would yet again play as the Wild Mother, which is another reason he played as the Wild Mother, Asha, in Downfall. And I just think it just makes a lot of sense that if you're going to play a character again, you're going to, want to play one you're familiar with. And what was interesting about the display between Caduceus and Asha was they were two sides of the same coin. One was the whole idea that nature shifts depending on what's happening around it. Caduceus was a very calm and peaceful person, whereas Asha was a very angry and violent person. So I think it'd be a lot of fun to see where this new version of Taliesin's Wild Mother ends up, because I just think it would be really cool to see another contrast yet again. And, the nature versus nurture thing is true within nature, right? So I think it would be really fun to see what happens with this character and where they start off, where they end up, and how like aggressive they're going to be or not. I think it'd be a lot of fun for us to see that through Talzin yet again. And Talzin's next potential god, in my opinion, is the Lovecraftian beast itself, the Chained Oblivion. Now, this is the one where I was sort of like, we're going to ignore some of the things that were said in Campaign 3 because the gods themselves said that the Chained Oblivion was something different and they wouldn't necessarily have to worry about it becoming mortal. But I think it would be really fun if it did become mortal. Like, if the Chained Oblivion became just a person and then we see like the Chained Oblivion sprout back up again, I think that would be a lot of fun as opposed to just leaving it in the abyss. I think it'd be a lot cooler if someone got to play it. And who else but the Lovecraftian enjoyer himself, Talzin Jaffe. I mean, shit, like he was basically like the pushing or the I don't know how to put it, but he's the reason that Candelabra Obscura is the way it is. I think I'm saying that right. I think every time I say it differently and someone makes fun of me for it. But, you know, that all of that stuff is like Lovecraftian based, and the Chained Oblivion just seems to be the most Lovecraftian sort of god out there, with the exception of maybe Predathos. So for me, just putting this character with Talzin just makes a lot of sense because of that whole Lovecraftian idea. And I think I've said Lovecraftian enough so we can move on. So next up we have Laura Bailey, and can you guys guess what I'm going to say for Laura Bailey? The Matron of Ravens, because she played her in Downfall. Also, because of that like portrayal in Downfall, I can't think of anyone else being the Matron of Ravens. A lot of people would be like, well, Liam could play the Matron of Ravens. Yes, but after what we saw with Amira and, you know, how much that shaped the character and the decisions of the character, I just can't see anyone else but Laura playing as the Raven Queen. And what I think is rather fun about like this character now is they were a mortal who became a god, who became immortal, who then went back to becoming a god, and is now going to be mortal again. And I truly think that Laura will be able to like role play that expertly. You know, the idea of I've been here before multiple times, I'm back in this body, now we need to figure this all out again. I think that would be a really interesting story for her to be able to tell. And I feel like she would be really good at role playing that whole scenario out of, I'm mortal again, I can't waste this. This is my last opportunity. So I think that would be a really interesting thing, and it's sort of a different story than a lot of Laura's other characters. So I truly think she would be the best, especially after we saw her as Amira. She did excellent like role play as Amira, so I would love to see that again, but with a little bit of a different twist on the character, because now she can't become a god again after this, so she's got to be a bit more concerned about things, which I think is really cool. So next up for Laura would be the Moon Weaver. Now, I was initially thinking Archheart, but honestly, looking at the Moon Weaver just kind of made more sense. One of her domains is literally the moon, which had a huge connection to one of Laura's previous characters in Imogen, and then one of her other domains is Trickery, which is a massive thing for Jester. So honestly, it just kind of makes sense that the Moonweaver would be someone who embodies a lot of the stuff that we've seen from Laura in the past. So for me, and there's a connection to the Fey Realm there, which Laura seems to have a fun fascination with. So honestly, every box has just been ticked with the Moonweaver connection with Laura, and I just think it'd be a lot of fun for her to be able to, you know, have that connection with the moon again, have that connection with Trickery, and it just makes a lot of sense. And honestly, chaos is something that Laura embodies at the table. So a character whose alignment before they were mortal was chaotic good just makes a lot of sense to me for her to play yet again. So for me, the Moonweaver just fits too many boxes not to suggest this as a potential god for Laura to play. And moving on to Liam O'Brien, I think it's pretty obvious who the first one's going to be based on the pattern I've given out so far, and the first character for him is the Platinum Dragon. I just think this makes a lot of sense, especially lately with some of the stuff that Liam's been embodying with both Aurum and Arrow. Those are two honor-bound characters who, are very... They're fight heavy. They can fight if they need to, but they're also protectors, which is just a way that I've always sort of looked at the Platinum Dragon as like a big protector, especially because at the end of Divergence, it was the Platinum Dragon who we saw like pop out and sort of begin putting like the Divine Gate over the world of Exandria, which is a massive shield of protection over Exandria itself. So for me, this character, the Platinum Dragon, just really does embody some of the stuff that Liam's been doing lately. And I mean, shit, look at Aurum's moveset. Goading Attack and Bait and Switch, right? Those are his two most used friggin' battle masteries that he had throughout the entirety of Campaign 3, and both of them are about protecting others. Goading Attack makes it have disadvantage, or makes the next attack on his enemy have disadvantage against everybody except him. And then on top of that, bait and switch gives more AC to the people he baits and switches with, or himself too if he really wants to. So overall, a protector-like character just makes a lot of sense for him right now. I don't know why I've got this vibe that Liam is trying to be a protector, but I just do. So personally, a character who puts an entire protective shield over the world of Exandria, that seems like the biggest protector of all time. So for me, the Platinum Dragon just fits really well with Liam right now. And for Liam's next potential god, I actually have the opposite side of the spectrum, which is Tiiamat. I think he could roleplay the ever-living hell out of Tiiamat so well. And here's the thing, right? We don't know how Tiiamat would operate, right? Because they could be 5 different people. So, like, they could be, I don't know what the word would be for 5 twins. Like, I don't know what the hell that word would be. Like, triplets, quadlets, fivelets, pentalets. I don't know. But you could have 5 different people and, Liam play one of them. Or they could all be in one head and they can all talk to each other. And I feel like Liam would be able to do either really well. And I think it'd be a lot of fun for that contrast to go from the Platinum Dragon in Divergence to Tiiamat. I think that would be a lot of fun. And I think it'd be really interesting, especially if we don't know. Like I feel like it would be really fun, right? During Campaign 4, it's introduced that Liam has 5 siblings. Planting some seeds pretty early on, or he is of 5 siblings, and they're all twins. I think that would be insane and crazy, and for a lot of us who are looking for this kind of stuff, would instantly pick up on that and be like, oh, Tiamat stuff right there. And, maybe when they're older, they'll join into one or some shit like that. I just feel like Liam would, revel in this. Revel, is that the word I'm looking for? He would just live in this spot of ooh, I've got this little secret that everyone else might be in on, but who knows if they are or not. I just feel like he would love this scenario too much to not let it happen. So moving on to Sam, Regal, and, some people would argue there's 3 options here, based off connections during, the different campaigns. But I want to kind of debunk one right away, which is Ioun. I think a lot of people might say Ioun might be a good choice for him, but Scanlan's connection to Ioun was more so out of necessity than truly following a character. And honestly, if we're going to be real, Scanlan should follow the Changebringer just like how FCG did, because they need change in their lives. Because, obvious reasons, Scanlan has a lot of issues. So following the Changebringer might have been a good idea for Scanlan to do, which is why I'm actually pointing out the Changebringer is the first one I'm going to put out there for Sam Regal. Because obviously the connections between FCG and the Changebringer are numerous. He was a follower, or they were a follower of hers throughout their time in Campaign 3. So it just makes a lot of sense that, that connection can continue and we can continue that story. Maybe we can see some grief through the Changebringer about FCG and what happened to them. Maybe we can potentially see them having a goal to bring them back somehow because they were a loyal servant to the end. So that would be really interesting and really cool as well. But also, I think, like I just noted, there's change in a lot of Sam's characters, right? If you look at Scanlan as a character went from, a horny bard to someone who wanted, I'm putting that very loosely, a horny bard to who felt sort of, ostracized from the group to, stepping in and taking care of his daughter, a person he didn't even know about, or trying to connect with his daughter. He truly tried to love Pike, and, they were off and on again relationship throughout their entirety of their lives throughout Campaign 1 to Campaign 3 so far, is a big thing of him trying to step up and be a better person. So change is something that is just inherent in Sam's characters, even not to Veth. I don't need to explain that one, I don't think, but there was a massive change between that character, right? That character went from a goblin to a halfling, and then also the relationships within the group itself. Sam's characters, in my opinion, represent change a lot. So it just makes sense that he would eventually play the Changebringer. So the second one for Sam would be Asmodeus. Now, outside of the obvious Breus connection that we could go for here, I think this would be really fun and really different for Sam as far as roleplay opportunities go. Now, Sam has noted that he felt it was kind of hard to betray the Bell's Hells while he was being Breus, which is kind of why he went down the path that he could. He sort of, he pulled back from the whole betrayal thing and decided to side with them, which I thought was really good for the character. But I feel like him playing Asmodeus would allow him, or Asmodeus, however you want to say it, would allow him to like truly sit in this form of like deceit with his other player characters, which I think would be a lot of fun for us to watch, especially because Asmodeus is truly a character who likely would have his faculties about him much sooner than other like of the reincarnated gods. So for us to have this character who's like secretly a villain the entire campaign would be so much fun, and for Sam to be the one role playing it and sort of put little hints out there, because let's be real, Sam is so good at leaving hints behind at certain things. You guys know the whole like Veth Bernardo, not the brave, like Otto, and there was so much like sneaky little shit that Sam put out there with like name stuff during campaign 2 about like the true identity of Not the Brave. It was crazy, absolutely crazy how much he was able to do with just, twisting a name around. So if he could figure out a way to twist around the name Asmodeus into something really interesting, I think that'd be awesome. And for him to be as sneaky as he is about the stuff that he does, it would be so sick. I think Sam could kill it as Asmodeus in campaign 4. So next up is Travis Willingham, and honestly, we've now moved into territory that's kind of difficult for me to pick 2 gods for people, because Travis and Marisa, who's next, don't really have that many connections to the gods. Out of all the players at the table, these 2 have the least. Now, Travis does have one, and it's a very strong one, with Ford and the Wild Mother. So the first one I'm going to pick for him is the Wild Mother. And it is simply based off the connection that he's played that character or played someone who's connected to that character in the past. I think it'd be really cool and really fun for us to see a different version of the Wild Mother than what Talzin has put forward in the past, because Travis would play the Wild Mother much differently than how Talzin would play it. So I think it'd be really cool for us to see that contrast between Asha, how Talzin played it, and whoever as Travis. And I think that'd be a lot of fun for us to see the contrast between the 2 characters. And it would truly show the difference in nature. Like, again, the nature versus nurture thing. Where is this character growing up? How is Travis going to portray them differently from Asha? Is he going to be violent? Is he going to be a peace person like Caduceus? I think it'd be really cool for us to see that contrast. And I feel like Ford is actually kind of an interesting like look at all of this, because Ford lies in between those 2, right? Caduceus being, wise and peaceful, and Asha being, violent and rough. Ford sort of fits in between the 2 already. So it would be really cool for us to see another character somewhere in that spectrum from Travis. I think it'd be really interesting. So when I think about Travis and characters that Travis makes, or the image that Travis tries to portray, like Grog is a big, muscly, strong fighter guy. Ford is also rather, he's large. He's not like the most buff character he's ever made, but he is still a physical fighter who can occasionally use Eldritch Blast, but he prefers to be up close and fight people with a sword. And then Chetney is yet again a stronger character and likes to be up close and personal and be, fit in the thick of things. And then, this is the only time I'm going to branch out in this way. When I think of Travis Willingham as a voice actor, one of the first things that I go to is Thor. He plays Thor a lot in a lot of different things. So realistically, this image of a strong, physical frontline fighter is something that I just visualize when I see Travis Willingham making a character. So for me, I don't think there's too many gods that fit that description better than Bane, the Strife Emperor. There's just something about it that I feel like fits super well, and this time we get to see an evil twist on it from Travis, which I think would be really cool for Travis to truly go deep into playing a evil character or secretly evil character, which I think would be really cool. Just a different type of vibe that we got before. Grog is just a sweet dummy who will occasionally get angry at people who hurt his friends. Ford is, again, another protector-like person who wants to grow as an individual. Chetney wants to protect people and, be a father figure to some of the group and sort of help them through life. And, he wants to be around these people he loves. Bane? Not so much. Just something different about it. Just something fun and different about something like that would be so cool for Travis to play. And last but certainly not least, we are moving on to Marisa Ray. And the first god that I think she could potentially play is another repeat god, because I think it'd be really interesting to see her take on the Matron of Ravens. This character is connected to a lot of Marisa's characters in interesting ways, not just she's played her in the past. Obviously, Keyleth fucking hates the Matron. And how fun would it be that Marisa is now the matron, a character she hates. But on top of that, she has a character named Paisha, who is implied to be the daughter of the woman who ascended to become the Matron of Ravens, and she hates her for it. So how fun would it be if two of her characters hate the Matron of Ravens, and she plays the Matron of Ravens? I think that would be some awesome irony, and I just feel like that makes so much sense. And I feel like she'd be able to give a different role play, way of doing things than Laura. So I think it'd be really interesting for her to pick up that role as well. So before I talk about the second god I've picked for Marisa, I kind of need to lay out a little scene for you. In Campaign 2, there was a mystery surrounding Lucian and the Nautigon. And Marisa, playing Bo, a rather intelligent character, was putting the pieces together. And she had a beautiful moment where she was explaining how everything connected to each other. She had a eureka moment, if you will. And she pieced everything together and she figured it out and she explained everything to us. And it's great. Go look it up on YouTube. It is one of the best, 20 minutes of a character putting everything together. And because of that, I feel like she has a really fun mind for these type of things, for making plans, deciphering plans, following through on plans, just being really smart. And she likes to, I feel like she would be really fun in another smart, intelligent character type role who has a long, drawn out plan, which is why I think she could be fun as Vecna, as opposed to being a good guy with a long, drawn out plan or being able to fit things together. She could be the bad guy who fits things together and makes an interesting plan and always has contingencies and always has a different route to go down if things go wrong. They're always right because they've always planned for being wrong, and I feel like that would be a lot of fun for Marisa to embody, for her to be able to be this intelligent villainous character who is doing some sort of long drawn out scheme throughout an entire campaign, much similar to how I think Sam being Asmodeus could work out. I would love to see this from Marisa, because Marisa has been, for the most part, a good character, and if there's been something wrong with them, it's because someone else has done something negatively to them. So I would like it for her to just be the bad guy. I feel like that would be a lot of fun. Her other characters feel wronged in some sort of way. Bo was wronged by her family and people who sort of forced her into the Cobalt Soul. Paisha felt wronged by her mother not sharing the secrets to becoming a god. And, obviously Laudna had a literal bitch inside of her trying to control her. So for once, it'd be really cool for me to see Marisa in this evil role. And I feel like Vecna would be a perfect vehicle for it because of Vecna's connection to the entire table. It'd be really fun and really cool for that to happen. So there you have it. What if the cast were the gods in Campaign 4? I just think this is a fun idea and a really cool concept that we could potentially see some gods pop up in the future as players. I don't think all of them should be gods. I think at most there should be 2. That being said, it would be kind of irritating sitting at the table and the people across from you and the person beside you got to be a god and you didn't. So maybe there shouldn't be any gods, but I think the storytelling is there for them to be able to do it, especially if they're villainous gods. I think that'd be so much fun. Sam and Marisa playing with the villains would be so cool in my opinion. But I also need to pick gods for Matt, but he's the DM. So he's all of them if he wants to be. So there you go. Cop-out answer for Matt yet again. Obviously, he was the all hammer in Divergence, so we'll just give him that one. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Did I hit? Did I miss? And let me know what your guys' list would be. Give me 2 gods for each of the cast members, and give me some gods for Matt who you think he could play in a future EXU type thing. So with that all being said, I will see you guys on Friday for the recap of episode 2 of the Age of Umbra. Peace.